Thank you, everybody, for joining today's session. My name is Onik, like it was mentioned. I'll be honest with you, I was a little nervous looking at the Databricks app for the competition for some of the other sessions. I really thought today was just going to be probably myself and a couple of my colleagues for the session, so thank you for joining. The session is how S&P uses Databricks to power insights and visualizations on the S&P Global Marketplace. So the agenda is quite straightforward today. There's three things to discuss. So one is S&P Global Marketplace. What's the client journey, going from discovery, exploration, and evaluation. Two, how do visualizations fit into that user journey, as in what's the value for them, how we build them. And then three, we're at the Databricks Summit, so we're going to be talking about how Databricks powers the marketplace visualizations. So we're going to start with the S&P Global Marketplace. So as I'm sure you've all seen, Databricks has a marketplace, S&P has a marketplace. These days, everybody pretty much has a marketplace. It's where producers and consumers of data kind of meet and interact to discover and explore different data solutions, delivery mechanisms, visualizations, and so on. For S&P specifically, S&P is a large company that if you mention S&P, people have different opinion of what they've heard. There's the S&P 500, there's ratings, there's ESG. There's a variety of different data sets and solutions that are kind of created throughout the whole S&P ecosystem. So when we talk about S&P Global Marketplace, it's the single catalog that we actually use internally and externally to be able to showcase the different data, solutions, and delivery mechanisms that we have. So for today's session, we're focusing on visualizations, which is specifically focused on the first pillar that you see, which is the data piece. We use visualizations specifically on the marketplace to showcase the value of the different data sets that S&P has. So if we just take a step back and focus on the actual client journey, what clients go through on the marketplace, we can then see how the visualizations fit into the actual journey. So there's a few distinct steps that happen for each client that goes through the journey. So exploration is one. So you need to be able to discover all of the different tiles, the different data sets that are available. The second is evaluation. So each client, each persona has their own success criteria of what data is available to them, important to them. For example, if you're a quant, you care about the frequency of the updates of the data. If you do any sort of textual analysis or NLP, you care about the breadth and depth of the textual data and how far back it goes. So the second step is really a step where the users make a decision if certain data sets is important to their workflow. The third step is trial and analyze, this is where users have to then spend certain time and resources to figure out how, if the data is good enough, how they can implement it into whatever production system they have. Once they make a decision, if they want to subscribe to it, then they purchase it and receive support, etc. So with those kind of four clear, distinct steps that users go through the journey, it's important to kind of front load a lot of information and interactivity in the first two steps, so in the explore and evaluate. The reason being is you want a client to be able to decide which data is important to them and figure out specific questions and features that data set actually has before they commit any time and resources in the trial and the analysis stage. So the session today focuses, if you see the box that's highlighted in red, focuses on a two-step approach. So we use Marketplace specifically for discovery, where users pick and choose what they like. And then two is S&P Global Workbench, which is actually a Databricks white label solution. And the reason I included Workbench here is partly because I'm biased. It's the solution that I'm responsible for. But specifically because we use actually Workbench, or the Databricks white label solution internally, for all of our visualization work. So anything to do with producing, creating any of the visualization, prepping the data, connecting, testing, mocking them up before we create them in Tableau or other visualization tools. So the reason why that's important is if you think about the build process, anything that we build internally in our Databricks account that we create, we also have an external account, which is the white label solution, which is Workbench, that we can reproduce for clients. The goal is once we create a visualization or some sort of a workflow, when clients see it, the goal is for them to say, great, this is what I'm looking for. Can I get access to the data? We share them the data. They like the visualization. They want the logic. We give them the data plus the code so they can recreate the actual visualization. So going a little bit as to how the marketplace actually looks. And I'll be honest with you, the last section is actually going to be a demo. So I know it's static, but the idea here is just to showcase how a marketplace would look like without any sort of visualizations attached to it. You have an ability to search, so you can type some sort of a data set that you might be interested in. You have a tile, so everything's modularized, just like every other data set. And then you have effectively what is a page of just text. So it's not interactive, it's a little bit boring. You have kind of integrated support with it, with documentation, but it doesn't really paint a picture of what's possible for clients. So this is effectively where visualizations come in. So we have a dedicated team that focuses on creating a lot of these visualizations, and we attempt to do 3 different things. So when we create visualizations, the first and most important thing is to create and enrich the story that we're trying to describe or tell for that specific content set. So this could mean a variety of different things. So one could be we're trying to highlight a specific feature of a content set, so we have some sort of enhancement. We try to present it in a way of showcase what the data set is actually conveying. It could be sometimes that there's a market-moving event or something that happens, and we need to create a visualization to showcase how our data can be tailored specifically to that event. 2, which is decision-making. So if you go back to think about the user journey that goes through the exploration and the analysis, we want to provide the visualizations to be able for users to make a decision if they actually care about the specific content that they're exploring. And then they can continue to trial it and so on. And then finally, it's important for users to give them a way to explore and discover some of the features of the data set and explore, touch, and feel the data. So that it's not just a blank page, but we actually have a way of interacting and exploring the content set without having to spend a lot of time of going into a database, loading the tables, querying it, writing code, etc. So this is, when we think about visualizations, these are kind of the 3 things that we try to do. Going into the types of visualizations that we have, there's 2 types. The first one is a coverage visualizations. So this is a very straightforward visualizations, which we create a pretty much standard template. So with every data set or every single type of data asset, there's generic questions that always come up. So users want to know about coverage. They care about their investment portfolio if it's available for this data set. So we're talking about sectors, region, country information. They care about history, timeliness. So the idea of a coverage visualization is every single one effectively looks the same. The idea is we build one coverage visualization, and then if you understand one of them, you know all of them, because they all look in the same structure. So if you're looking to answer questions about a data set, you can effectively expect to see one of these coverage visualizations across all of the data sets. And I'm going to show you how that works in a second as well. And then finally, the second type of visualization that's created on the marketplace is showcase visualizations. So the reason why showcase visualizations are a little bit more interesting is because these are custom built for some specific purpose. They are a lot more complicated to create. They have a lot more of a requirement for the amount of time that it's spent. And what we do for showcase visualizations is we create a working group between a couple of different personas. So in S&P, each data set has a specific product manager that owns the content set. We bring in the product manager, we bring in data engineers, we bring in a person from the visualization team, and a person that's going to be QA, UATing the data set. And the product manager, or sometimes even a commercial person, kind of dictates what they want to be able to showcase to a client. I'm not sure if you guys can exactly see it, but when we go into the actual visualization itself, I'll make sure it's a little bit bigger so you can see it. the point of the showcase visualization is to kind of paint the art of the possible. So what can a client do with this data? The example of this visualization was actually created from the start of the year. If you remember, there was financial institutions that had, I think it was bankruptcy issues, which was SVB, First Republic. So when something like that happens, we create a visualization to showcase how if you use the S&O regulatory data, which is an example of the financial data items for the banking industry. Effectively, you want to just showcase, if you're looking at SVB, how does its liquidity ratio or its cash compared to the peer group, to the industry average, and it's a way of just showcasing the value of the data. And at the end, when we go through a process of how the team approaches building the visualization and making it interactive, we'll go through a notebook example of kind of how it's structured and how they mock up the visualization before they create it in Tableau. So going into kind of the last slide of what I wanted to showcase, this slide was actually created with the visualization team. So the team had a process where they created visualizations before Databricks actually existed in the S&P universe. So what we effectively spoke about is I asked them for what are some of the problems or challenges they had before Databricks and after Databricks. So the usual problems that came up were when they were creating visualizations, you have to imagine there's a lot of different personas that do different things. Some build the Tableau dashboard, some do the data engineering, some do the actual storytelling. The main thing that Databricks allowed them to do was to effectively collaborate in a single environment, have all of the code in one place, and effectively it builds consensus. So the product managers can see the story that's being built. If they need to see the progress or they need to see the visualizations, they know exactly in what location it is, what notebook it is, how it looks. If they're unhappy about the direction of the story or the data is not really telling the story correctly, then they pivot and they can go a different direction. From the coding perspective or the building perspective, it's collaborative in kind of the unique selling points that Databricks usually has. It's co-presence, it's co-editing. You have all of the different teams in one place building together, so you don't have to go and look for a random Python file that was misplaced or a SQL query that was somewhere else that somebody lost or they went on holiday and you can't find it. So collaborative was actually the main thing that they wanted to highlight. The second one, which I think was also very important, was actually the performance. So one use case for performance that we had was we needed to build an interactive dashboard that you could have a portfolio and you enrich it for ESG analysis. So that was a very heavy workflow that required, if you imagine you have a portfolio, you have to enrich it, you have to do the security mapping, you have to do the ESG methodology calculations, and then you have to connect to a visualization. So what the team did with Databricks was we put all of the data in one place. We standardized the process where everything was calculated on the Databricks platform. And we've gone through the standard triple layer approach, which is you have your bronze, silver, and your gold layer. So all of the heavy lifting and all of the compute and all of the horsepower was actually done in Databricks before you touch any BI tool. The reason being is there's some sort of a threshold or some sort of a breaking point that you don't want all of that logic to actually live in the visualization itself. You don't want Tableau to be creating all of the heavy computation that's needed for the actual calculations for the portfolio. So we move all of the calculation within Databricks, and then you create your final table, and then that connects to the actual Tableau or Power BI or other BI tools. And then finally was having a single platform. So this was effectively one home for everything. We had all of the personas, all of the data, all of the tools, all of the logic, all of the code was effectively pretty much in one place. So from a Databricks perspective, these are the things that kind of restructured how the visualization teams started to build a lot of these visualizations. So maybe going into a little bit of an example of how Marketplace looks and an example of a few visualizations and how we built them. Hopefully there's no firewall issues. Can you guys still see? Fantastic. So this is S&P Global Marketplace. The functionality is quite straightforward. You have kind of a universal search where you can search for different data sets and solutions. So if we just pick a random one, which is our main one, which is financials. Let me see if my internet's connected. It wouldn't be one of my presentations without a technical issue, so this is expected. Let me see quickly. Yeah, guys, I think I've got a little bit of an internet issue. Okay. Okay, maybe it's connectivity. Okay. Let me go back a second then, and then I'll show you the actual build process. All I really wanted to show, and I'll show it briefly, was to show you how the visualizations actually look on the platform itself. Given that the internet's not letting me actually access the marketplace, there's two types of visualizations I wanted to show you, and the main one specifically was the showcase one, just because this is the one that I'm going to show you how the team effectively built out. So hopefully you'll be able to see that, and I'll zoom in and walk you through it. Okay. So in this visualization, we want to be able to showcase the value of the data. So what we do is we decide what is going to be the interactive part of that visualization. So in the section in the top right, you have an ability to pick a target company. So you want to be able, the user, to interact with what company they want to see. On the left-hand side, you have the specific items or ratio that's relevant for the banks failing or not performing well. And then you have effectively a visualization chart that allows you to see for SVB or First Republic or any bank that you select on that dropdown, how does it compare to its peers? So the red dots are actually showing the signal of how the cash and cash equivalents or the liquidity ratio is actually at specific events is declining. That allows you to compare the direction of the bank in the industry as to where it was going. So the process of what happened when we're building out these visualizations is we go into Databricks. Hopefully the notebook is still alive. And we do the following. So the team works on this internal instance. What we do is, because all of our data is available into this instance, any visualizations can be built in here. We have a connection to all of the different data sets that we have. So whether we have CSVs from somewhere else, whether we connect into a data warehouse, everything is effectively going to be in this instance in the data connection. And then the process works like this. We map out who is the team and the users that are going to be building out some of these visualizations. So you have the product manager, the data specialist, the visualization person, who's doing the testing. We structure the notebook in the following way. So you have a connection and a link to all of the different data sets that are going to be used. And then we have the use case or the story that is going to be described. Let me see if I can zoom in a little bit. Yeah, so the goal was to be able to allow a user to explore the failed banks at the start of the year and to then visualize the different metrics and peers compared to the industry averages. So a standard use case like that, we structure it in the following way. We do sort of a high-level overview of the industry. So we map out the different industry, what size it is. And I've hidden a lot of the code, and I've taken sections out because I don't think we want to go through all of the code, just kind of the important bits. So one is we prep the data. We find out in the specific sector what are all of the companies, what are the different IDs. We start bringing in, we enrich it with other additional information and create just a general overview so we have an understanding of how big the data, of how big the universe is, how big the industry is. We use some, generally we tend to use Plotly for the visualizations library to kind of mock up how the visualization could potentially look like. And then as we go down into the actual notebook itself, we tend to start going into some of the inputs that a user might be submitting. So we go in for the specific list of banks, we extract the data, we create the specific universe that's going to be queried. We go into the data set that we're interested in, that we're going to be playing around with some of the information. So we try, for example, this is an example of the liquidity ratio, but we extract all of the additional information that's available to actually build out the visualization. And then we let the visualization team that mocks up the example in conjunction with the product manager then creates a sample visualization of how it would look like before we build it in any sort of business intelligence tool. So this is the example of the chart that came up. Hopefully you can see it a little bit better than the slide that we had. It kind of compresses it. But this was the initial mock-up before it was built in Tableau. So what happens is you have Silicon Valley, which is in green, which was supposed to be the subject company in the visualization. We map it out against all of the different peers. So you can see the dispersion of, this is the liquidity ratio, so how it compared against the peers in the same company. And then we also created a couple of tables that aggregate the different industries, so you can see how it compared against the industry. So we have the savings banks, and we have the US commercial banks. And that way, you're just showing with the data what happened over the last few years, and how the indicators for the actual banks moved towards the start of the year. Once we have that kind of mock-up of the chart, we go into the actual building process of creating the Tableau visualization. And the process that happens is internally first, we use Databricks, and we use the SQL endpoints to make a live connection and explore it, see how it works, start building it. Once we go through the build process of getting all of the data in the right place, we have the visualization, how we want it to look. The way that it currently works is we use the hyperfiles that we create with Tableau, and then each visualization is then added to the actual marketplace, and from then on, that is how users start to beginning to interact with them. If you give me 1 second. Unfortunately, the next stage was actually me showing you a couple of different visualizations. Okay, that's not going to work. Sorry, guys. If you just give me 2 minutes, let me see if I can fix this. Let me pause it. If not, and I can't resolve this, then we can probably wrap this up here. Unfortunately, let me see. Yeah. Unfortunately, guys, I don't think I'm going to be able to connect. So it's a bit anticlimactic, to be quite honest with you, but the reality is we had a couple of visualizations that are showcases and coverage visualizations to walk you through it. And if I can't connect properly, then I can't do that. So let me see if I can reset this. And maybe we can move on to questions as well at the end, if there are any. Yeah, go ahead. No, it's okay. Sorry? Data store? We have a few different delivery mechanisms. So we have an SFTP. So we have a lot of the data that we can deliver via an SFTP. We have one of the cloud partners is Snowflake, where we have a data warehouse within Snowflake. And then we also are working with Databricks for the data to also be available from Databricks and a data sharing perspective. At the moment, we also have APIs and other things. But when we work with Databricks, we have a live connection, and we have all of the data available. It's mounted effectively within our Databricks account in the Databricks workspace. Where do you want to use your data? In a Databricks account? In a Databricks account? So what we do for clients that use ExpressFeed but want to move to the cloud is we create effectively, we give you access to a data warehouse, could be like a Snowflake Reader account, and we do the mapping. So we have the code, the custom code that connects like a Reader account to Databricks until everything is ready for us to share from Databricks to Databricks. Okay, perfect. So as soon as I get off stage, we can have a conversation of how we can do that. Okay. Okay, perfect. I think we've got 15 minutes left. Okay. So picking another random database. Data set. A couple of different examples that we have available. So this is a marketplace style, general overview that describes how everything works. This is the section that a lot of our users spend the most time on. So at the moment, on Marketplace, we have about 150 different data sets that are available. And we have about, I think, 55 that have visualizations on them. So when we look at the visualization section, we tend to create a few different vizzes for each data set. So this is a coverage viz. So we tend to start initially with the coverage questions just because these are the most common ones that users tend to ask. So they want to understand what year was the history in. So you have an ability to change the year. That showcases the coverage. It covers generic questions like country, region, sector, etc. And then another popular question that we tend to have for coverage vizzes is the index coverage. So we tend to provide a user with a couple of different indices that they can select because it's just the easiest way to do some sort of a coverage check. And then you're allowed to see, you can show them across the different sectors what percentage of that sector is covered by this data set. And then you can break it down by different things. So market cap, number of constituents. And if I go back and I look at, for example, a different data set, let's say textual data. And I go back to the right, you can see that the coverage visualizations are pretty much templated. That saves us a lot of time when we have to build them. Whenever a new data set or a new feature is created, we tend to produce a new visualizations that focuses on the coverage. If I go back to the first visualization, we tend to showcase, we do the showcase visualizations. That's the first one that a user would be able to see. So for example, this is showing like the earning call sentiment, language complexity, effectively highlighting some sort of a feature that conveys the story of what's possible with the data set. And if I go back as the final example, which was, I think it was regulatory information, just so you can see how the other one functions. So this is the visualization that we walked through. Hopefully it's a little bit bigger. So you can see a user is able to go through a specific institution that they care about. Let's say First Republic Bank. You can change the data item, so let's say liquidity ratio. And you can see it's an interactive visualization that allows the user to kind of play around with the data, pick what institution is important to them, and that kind of conveys and showcases the value of the content set. So to maybe just summarize before we can open up for any additional questions, I think that the main value for Databricks and for the teams that use it to build out the visualizations is that for us is that everything is in one place. We have all of our content, all of our data sets, all of the different analytics that we will need in a single place. We use it specifically for the performance reasons, where we're able to move all of the logic and calculations within Databricks before we actually make any sort of connection within a BI tool, or we prep the data for it to be displayed within Marketplace in this case.